Hey guys, it's Stephen here back with another video, and of course we're all riding that Erling Haaland hype still, and I wanted to talk to someone today who knows a little bit more about our new superstar than I could ever possibly essentially give to you as information. So I've asked this wonderful gentleman alongside me, Archie Rhind-Tutt, who's the Bundesliga reporter. He's on the ground constantly for ESPN. Archie, thank you so much for coming on, mate.
All good. Thanks, Stephen, for having me.
No worries. How are you today? You all right?
Yeah, fine. I mean, a little bit from the spectacle point of view. It's a shame that Erling Haaland is leaving the Bundesliga because there was always something to watch whenever he was playing for Borussia Dortmund. So it's a loss for the league.
Yeah, of
But
course.
I'm also just very intrigued to see what happens with him at Manchester City.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of half touched on something that I wanted to talk about anyway, about him as a character, because he is an interesting character, isn't he? Now, not many people realize you've literally interviewed Erling a few times. He's known as an interesting soul when it comes to interviews. I mean, what's your experience with him as a person, and how have you worked with him in the past?
He's economical with his words. He he will get straight to the point, and I think that he is how he plays in that he's very direct. And to be honest, I quite like that quality in him sometimes. Sometimes people move around the point, but he will just go straight in. If they've lost, then he will name what he thinks the problems are. And yeah, if they've won, then he'll stand about like an excited schoolboy and just kind of pretend that he's not happy. But yeah, I think as a character, yeah, I have to say, as an interviewer, you have to prepare yourself for him. I definitely note down when I'm thinking about things a few more questions for him than I have
All in
for
tax.
other players. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, he's, I think, sometimes very blunt. But you know, that it's what works for him, and he certainly, I think he's become a little bit more diplomatic in how he expresses himself. But he's not given as many interviews this season as he did in the previous season, for example. I think the more that the transfer speculation has gone up, the lower the profile that he has kept, apart from really an interview that he did in January with my Norwegian colleague 𝐌𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐿𝐴, where he marched over to him unannounced and spoke to him about how he was frustrated about how Dortmund were pushing him in a direction to make a decision, and he wanted to take his time over that. So yeah, I seen less of him, but I had both on and off the pitch in that regard.
We forget as well sometimes he's really young still, because you mentioned before he bounced about like an excited schoolboy. I mean, on the pitch, the way he plays, he seems quite expressive. You know, his celebrations are very larger than life. He seems quite pally with his teammates, I guess. I mean, that's the outsider perception looking in. Obviously, you've been closer to that than I have. Is this something that seems relatively astute as an observation? Is he a lot more open with his colleagues and so on, his teammates? Does he seem quite a popular member of the squad?
I think everyone is in comparison with the media. I mean, you say he's young, but I remember speaking to him about 𝐌𝐿𝐴 𝐷𝐿𝐴 when he made his debut
Yeah.
away at Hertha.
Was 16,
And
wasn't he, I think?
yeah, exactly. I said to Erling, "Well, you've you know what do you have to say about him?" And he goes, "You know, you're still pretty young." And he goes, "No, I'm now old." He, he just passed 20 at this point. So yeah, he's got a dry sense of humor, I think, as well. And yeah, I think he did have a connection with players in the squad. The thing is, he was in the last few years for Dortmund so much better than so many members of the squad that it was difficult, really, I think, to to level anything against him, because he carried that team on so many occasions that what are you going to say to the guy who is effectively getting you over the line so often?
Yeah, of course. I saw some of your tweets as well about his departure. Obviously, there must be a sense of deja vu here for Dortmund. It's another young player who's come in and moved on. We've seen this pattern before, with Sancho recently, Dembele. What's the general feeling around Dortmund likely to be? There was some spicy comments from certain Dortmund board members and so on about him leaving. Is there a mood of frustration coming from Dortmund's end?
Deep down, this was the plan. They knew why they were buying Erling Haaland. It was always, it was always going to be the case that he was going to up sticks after a few years and leave for a greater sell-on price if everything went well. And the fact that there was that Dortmund got him in the first place, and there was that clause in the contract, Dortmund would probably not have got him had there not been that clause.
Yeah.
And he was the first player that I think they allowed a sell-on clause in the contract for since Mario Götze left, because you might remember that Borussia Dortmund got badly burnt in that situation.
Just a little.
He left for Bayern Munich. So I think resentment, no. Maybe for how things have been handled within the club, with how it's not being clear exactly whether he is going or not. I think the longer time has gone on, the club has had to make plans for the event that he was going. It seemed obvious for all the world to see that he was off this summer. But I think that he could have done himself a favour or two more had he said, I'm off at an earlier point, because the fans in Dortmund, they value a certain honesty, which I think Erling Haaland usually would have and show.
Do you think he was advised maybe not to? Do you think he was an element of he'd been told maybe not to do it because not to rock the boat and upset the season or something like that?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I just think that because of the way that there was this constant chatter in the background of where's Erling Haaland going, and that was overshadowing what was happening with Borussia Dortmund, which at certain points in the second half of the season, it was maybe not a bad thing, because what was happening with Borussia Dortmund was not good in any sense. So I think that, it'll be interesting to see what kind of reaction he gets on the final day of the season against Hertha. I'm going on Saturday, and there will be farewells to Marcel Schmelzer, club's legendary left-back who's not played at all in the last few seasons. Michel Zorc, the sporting director, and long-time club legend as a player as well. And big question for me is, how will Haaland be received? Because at the start of the season, there were no ultras in the stadium. There was, I think, a more euphoric reception for Erling Haaland. It was more spontaneous, and it was more just reactive to the goals that he was scoring. Yeah. I remember the first day of the season was probably Dortmund's best game of the season as well. They beat Eintracht Frankfurt 5-1. Haaland had a hand in all 5 goals, if I remember correctly. And yeah, I just still have in my head the chant of the stadium PA announcer, 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, also a club legend, saying Erling, and the rest of the stadium just booming back with Haaland. And just from there, it just wobbled quite a lot, whether it's through injury, the rest of the team being, I think in transition is the politest way of putting it. But yeah, so the reactions he's had more this season have been probably more reflective of the non-ultra crowd, but now the ultras are back. Intrigued to see if there are any banners at the weekend for him or in his direction. But yeah, look, to come back to the point you were saying originally about, how will they feel, Sancho, it's Pulisic, it's Dembele over again. This has been Dortmund's plan to how they become more financially competitive in the future. So they've very much accounted for this. They are one of these clubs who have been badly hit by the pandemic. That's created a big hole in their budget. They lose 4 million euros every time that they've had to play a home game behind closed doors. I think the home form's suffered as well a bit because of that.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I think it's a case where no one is surprised that Erling Haaland has chosen to go to Manchester City.
Okay. So obviously his time on the pitch as a player, he seemed quite successful. Dortmund probably not in the best spell as a club at the moment in terms of success and so on. But his record at Dortmund as an individual has been good. I think I'm looking at his stats now. It's 85 goals in 88 games in just 2.5 years there, which is mightily impressive, and it speaks volumes of what kind of player he is. He's just a goal scorer. How has his game adapted, if at all, I guess, during his 2.5 years at Dortmund? Have you seen any changes of the way that he approaches his game?
I know that Lucien Favre worked very hard with him on his technique and adjusting certain things with him. Lucien Favre is renowned for this kind of thing, like with former defender of Borussia Dortmund, Diallo, it was, who went to PSG. He remarked that the way he was holding his hands as he was running, he needed to adjust that. There is no detail too small for Lucien Favre. And I think that Haaland definitely benefited from that, particularly in his ball control, for example.
Yeah.
And the way he's adapted, he's become stronger as well. I think that he's become clearer in his actions and knowing what he has to do. There's a certain more conviction that he has in his game, which I think is also just normal of a younger player growing in confidence, finding out more about their game as well as they go on. But the one thing has been consistent, and that's been that he is always a threat. I can't remember watching too many players live who just have an ability to swing a game in a different direction all by themselves. There was a game away at Hertha Berlin, November 2020 it was. They were 1-0 down. Dortmund had played really poorly in the first half. Yeah. Really poorly. There was something of a *𝐌𝐞𝐫𝐜𝐿 moment at the start of the second half where you could hear, because it was an empty stadium.
I had 4-4 in my head then, basically.
you could hear one of the Hertha players shout, "All right, let's start this well." And within 5 minutes, they were 2-1 down. Haaland scored.
Haaland happened.
4 in that second half. Lucien Favre lost count of how many goals he scored.
I saw that actually. He was doing the whole 3-4 thing, on the sidelines.
Yeah, but that was just one of those evenings where they got Erling, and it felt surreal, because it wasn't like the goals they were scoring it felt out of this world, but it was just a player was so much better than his opponent that they had to submit to him. And you've seen that happen on numerous occasions now with him, and that's sometimes the otherworldly quality that he has. And I think it's brought him a certain amount of respect from defenders as well. And so they just don't know how to play him. He has these pendulum hips, which for a big guy is not to be taken for granted. And I think that it makes it difficult for defenders to know which direction is he going. He doesn't quite have Mbappe levels of dribbling.
Yeah.
And that kind of nimbleness, but I've still seen him dribble past 3 or 4 players. I remember speaking to 𝐌𝐞𝐫𝐿, the now Bayern coach, who was at Leipzig, and his solution in that situation when he did dribble past 3 or 4 of his players was, there has to be a tactical foul.
Yeah.
So
he's obviously very different, but he reminds you a little bit when he gets running. He's obviously not the same kind of player, but when he started bombarding forward, the same level of just bulldozing power and height and stuff. Technically different players, obviously, but there's an element of that to his game when he starts dribbling, just power, pace, just bustling past people.
He doesn't he's not dribbling so much with the ball. This is the thing. He's clever enough to lay the ball off, and then it's just, and I will make that run for goal now, and I will make my run in whatever way I need to. He got into this half space, as they call it over here, so often on his left foot, on the left-hand side, where you just knew the corridor that Dortmund were trying to play the ball into him at. And if he got into that on his left foot, it just felt, okay, well, you might as well start walking back to the halfway line because this is going in. And just this absolute hammer of a left foot that if he powers it up, then to be able to stick it in the roof of the net as often as in my brain it's been playing anyway.
Yeah,
is a
actually,
certain skill.
to be honest. Aguero did that a lot, didn't he? I mean, that's one thing we're used to as City fans. The roof of the net, absolutely. And there's a near post, top corner, roof of the net, and that seems to be a Haaland trait from the outside looking in anyway.
Yeah, he's had a little more finesse in his game as well. He's got that in his locker, but yeah, just the power, that hammer that he can pack with his left foot is, yeah. Sometimes the ball hits the net and you recoil like, okay, that was fine.
So I guess like in terms of his strengths, we talked about his, obviously his frame, his pace, his finishing. But there are always downsides to every player. I mean, it sounds crazy to say that about a player we're signing, and I'm not trying to be too critical of this guy we just signed as a City fan, but there are areas of his game to work on, I would guess. I mean, is there anything that stands out for you that you feel like he needs to improve if he's going to, I guess, just improve as a player generally?
This is the thing about the guy, is that whenever he identifies a weakness in his own game, he goes away and works on it. So with, for example, his heading, Dortmund weren't swinging many crosses into the box for him anyway. This is the thing. He's a bit of it's weird in that he's a tall mountain, but he's somebody that is very good with his feet. And it's not like, Pep Guardiola is not exactly the let's put the ball into the mixer, is he? So,
when we're losing, he sometimes does it. Honestly, 50 crosses a game when we're losing. Trust me.
Sure. Okay.
Rarely, but yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he is. Maybe this is the change of Pep right now. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's got a target man and that's it. Yeah. But go on, you were saying.
Yeah. No. So he went away, worked on his heading, and came back stronger in that regard. I think that actually for him, it's going to be knowing his body is going to be important. Can he maintain his fitness over season after season after season? This season, there's been a big controversy in Dortmund about the amount of injuries there have been within the first team squad, including Erling Haaland. Difficult from the outside to really know where to point the finger in that regard. But from what you hear about what would continually happen at Dortmund is they would set a certain date for Erling Haaland to come back. And he always seemed to come back a week or two before that date was set. So it always in my head had the sort of, is the guy properly listening to his body and being like, I can play. It doesn't matter what state I'm in, I can play. And I think that, look, he is still early 20s. A lot of time for him to go in his career. I don't think it would have necessarily been a bad thing had he stayed an extra year at Dortmund to work things out. But I think there was a certain frustration with the way that things were going with the team that I think now was seen as the right point for him to move on. But yeah, knowing how to manage his body just that little bit better. I mean that in the sense of like knowing where his limits are, because look, the guy is in incredible shape. Don't know if you've seen photos.
He's quite big. I'll be honest. Yeah.
Right. I don't go looking up photos of athletes' legs usually, but
City fans. We got Grealish. We've been doing that for a year now, so
okay.
We've got another one to rival Grealish's calves, and basically.
Sure. But yeah, and just sometimes, and this is not even across whole games, but there are moments in the game where he looks very hacked off with life, and it's just, I think, something he needs to just curb out of his system. But that comes with time, again as well. There was a game against Cologne where I just watched him for the entire 90 minutes, and which was informative as well, because it was in an empty stadium and you could hear everything that was going on, and you could hear how he was laying into 𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐷, central midfielder for for not making a tactical foul. I think it was at a certain stage, and yeah, he was pretty brusque with him. Shall we say?
Fernandinho would enjoy that, so he gets the ticks up for that one there.
Yeah. Like, you know, he is right. He wants responsibility. He'll take that, and if something's not right, then he will say that. So yeah, I don't know if it's a weakness, but strength of character with him working with Pep Guardiola, I'm intrigued to see how that works out.
Yeah, that's going to be a mesh of personalities there. It's going to be really interesting to see how they, I guess, work together. I mean, I guess I could twist it in a positive say he obviously cares, you know, he obviously wants to succeed. And there are, I guess, other players. I mean, Ronaldo's quite famously, you know, tart with his players at times and his colleagues. He's frustrated. And I guess a lot of people who are used to winning can get relatively short with people if they're not doing well. I mean, obviously he'll evolve and change and so on. So obviously his injuries, we talked about that a little bit. But what about his, like, what's your perception of his overall potential? I know that sounds really a little bit trying, a bit obvious, but like, what is the limit for Erling Haaland? You know, because he's already doing stupidly good things at a very young age here. I mean, essentially, as a City fan, I'm really, really excited. I'm a little bit giddy. Do I need to calm down a little bit, or is he sort of worth the hype?
That's the question.
It is the question, Archie. You're meant to answer, mate.
I know. That, I think the biggest question and almost the biggest advantage of him joining Manchester City now is they have, as you are acutely aware, still not won the Champions League under Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, it's painful.
So
it's a long time ago now.
If you can be the if you can be the player who comes in and then you win the Champions League with him, that is a feather in his cap, albeit from the outside world, it's a very expensive cherry on top of a very expensive cake. And that for him though would be I think that would be a first sign. That would be the next step, is winning a trophy of that caliber. He shot Dortmund to a DFB Cup, which was impressive. I saw him take apart 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐿 in the final.
Good player as well.
I mean, 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐿's had the better of him, I'd say, in the game since then, from memory. But yeah, I think that going to Manchester City, he's not going to be playing on the counter as much as he had. He's not going to have that same space to run into. He's going to have to develop a different kind of patience, because you're going to face opponents who will sit deep and will be very happy to sit deep. And 0-0 is a good result against Manchester City. So how he adapts his game, what advice he's willing to listen to. I think he's proven before that he will take everything on board if he thinks he can improve it. But I think, yeah, I'm just wondering what is the limit? The limit, I don't think he's going to win a World Cup with Norway.
Yeah.
I think that is a limit, a little probably, but I think that such as the squad that Manchester City have, there is no club trophy that is going to be beyond him, and you can see how close the Manchester City have got to that already. So yeah, I think there are steps for him before we talk about Ballon d'Ors and all that. Like first and foremost, he needs to settle in the Premier League, the question is really not if he's good enough. But yeah, the question is how he adapts to a new environment. And look, he is still young and still should be afforded time. But the rod that he's made for his own back is that because he's done astonishing things for his age, he will be judged by astonishing standards that he's set himself. So yeah, but he will be setting those standards for himself privately as well. So only the best will be good enough for Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I get the sense sometimes that nothing really phases him. Is that a fair conclusion?
Yeah, Pretty much, yeah.
He just seems to be
I don't know
cold.
what more I can add to that.
Yeah, I mean, he just looks like like it's normal for him. I've got a slight working theory that, obviously football's in his blood. His dad, and obviously dad didn't. He's not going to have the career that his son did, but his dad was a good player. He played for Manchester City, of course, and captain side. So he obviously has that in his DNA. He's obviously got he's a professional athlete from his dad and his mum as well. I think was a heptathlete and so on. So he's got that background, and of course, he's got that background, of course, with his parents both being athletes, and obviously his dad was literally captain side, so he's got a certain mentality. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see how he adapts to the Premier League. Archie, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us, mate. It's been really, really appreciated.
All good. Thanks, Steve.
No, it's great, mate. Cheers. Don't forget, if you want more content about this kind of stuff, I'll be making loads of Haaland videos. Of course I will. It's Erling Haaland side for Manchester City. Archie's an absolute legend. You can go and follow his work, of course, over on Twitter and all that kind of stuff at ESPN. There'll be links in the description, all that kind of stuff. And now, though, City signed Haaland. It's going to be spectacular, hopefully. For now, like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff, and I'll catch you all very, very, very soon.